Myths, misconceptions, and tall tales from the guitar business.
I can already hear the Poly.
We've been in the guitar business a long time, so over the years we hear all kinds of wild tales.
Yeah, there's a lot of funny stories that we come across, and there's a lot of continuing themes that we deal with. So we're hoping today to dive deep into some of these from the other side of the counter and give you our perspective and take on a lot of these mainstream misconceptions.
You hear a lot about what songs people in a guitar store don't want to hear you play.
Yeah, I think Wayne's World really perpetuated that myth that there's no Stairway in a guitar store, so no one plays it because they think that's a song that, we're going to melt if we hear that. We're not. We'd love to hear the solo from Stairway.
Sure. I don't think anyone's playing the solo from Stairway, just ripping into it these days.
No.
You know what? I haven't heard Stairway to Heaven in the last 25 years.
No one plays it.
No one plays it. But you know what people do play? Let's talk about that. People play Blackbird.
It's not necessarily a song you would think, everyone's going to play at a guitar store, but that is the new Stairway. Blackbird
is the new
one
Stairway.
Generationally dependent, one of the new Stairways.
For sure. You think it's a pleasant song, but it could really get to you after a while. And especially like when you're going on year 7 to 8 of like hearing it multiple times by multiple different interpretations, it'll get to you. So that is just a little pointer. That's the new Stairway. But I mean, there's a runner-up, right? There's like the elephant in the room.
I mean, it's a close second, maybe even a tie for first.
It might be passing. It's like like you said, generationally, this one is pulling up behind Blackbird, and it's now moved into lane to pass.
And what would that song be?
Slow Dancing in a Burning Room, right?
It's a popular song, and it's a smooth song. It's a nice song, but just like anything, right? You can't have too many Lindt chocolates at Christmas. There's certain things you just can't have too much of, or they become bad.
Yeah, and just eat your brain, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a good riff, good melody, it's good guitar tone song. I can understand, but if you're going to try something out, and maybe you're going to try 10 or 15 guitars, and you're going to play that exclusively to tone check them, you're going to turn some heads at the store that you're at.
Sometimes customers ask to be there when their guitar arrives so they can take it out of the box. They can open up that present and look at it with their eyes for the first time.
And that might turn into a very traumatic experience for them. And that's usually what we'd like to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of the last line of defense. The manufacturer builds the instrument, and a lot of these manufacturers are building a ton of guitars, and for the most part, very good quality, very dialed in. But a lot of times we get instruments in, that the intonation's off, the pickup height adjustment, the neck needs adjustment. There's all sorts of things that can happen in shipping or even in QC.
Sure. It might have been, just some things were overlooked, or they're just trying to run fast to get through things. Sometimes things like the nut slots, or the nut slots cut properly. Is the truss rod adjusted? Is the intonation set, or is it just someone did a rough thing visually with the saddles to make sure? But anyway, what we like to do when we get an instrument in, especially if you've ordered something, we want to make sure it's perfect. Because a lot of this stuff, especially the stuff that we carry, they are fantastic instruments. They can all be perfect, but that doesn't mean they necessarily arrive perfect all the time. So right out of the box, you probably don't want to take that chance.
Yeah, we like to be that last, piece of bread in the sandwich to make sure that you enjoy every bite.
That's right. I just bought this amazing high-end acoustic guitar, and now it's cracked. My guitar from 45 years ago that's been in my closet has never fallen apart, never cracked, never moved. Why is this new guitar such a piece of junk?
Well, you must have bought a lemon.
Or you bought a good guitar.
Yeah, I mean, new guitars are made with thin top sheets, scallop bracing often, thin back and sides, all solid woods. The Yamaha or the Yamaha you have from 50 years ago, it's made with laminate materials that are very thick, super durable, but that's why the guitar sounds the way it does.
Yeah, yeah. The guitar sounds like a shoebox with a set of rubber bands on it, right? And the top's a 1/4 inch thick. Like nothing is gonna ruin that. But now you want to upgrade. You want to get a good guitar. There's some real life maintenance that has to go with that, and that's normal. Any good instrument these days, like you, no matter what brand it is, like including lots of wonderful brands that we don't carry, you have to manage the humidity on it when you're in a climate that calls for that. Like here, if we didn't humidify the place, it would be 20%. Everything would fall apart. Yeah, we just had a guitar come in today that was like completely like
exploded,
completely imploded.
Imploded. Yeah.
And that's just from being left unhumidified for a month when they were on holidays.
Yeah, so 45 to 55% humidity is what you want to keep. Just for the record, you want to keep it in that sweet spot. That's where wood likes to stay. And if you don't do that, you're always running the risk that your guitar is going to implode or explode or whatever's going to happen.
Yeah, and so the idea of thinking that your cheap guitar never needed it, your expensive one shouldn't, is completely backwards. Your expensive guitars will always need that kind of babying in the wintertime or in the summer if you're in like the desert somewhere.
That's why when Donnie comes over, you give him the Yamaki. You don't give him your, HD 28 or your 914. You give him the Yamaki.
You give it to him.
Another common thing we hear, especially with first-timer guitar players, is I heard I need to start with an acoustic guitar. And we're here to tell you, you can start with whatever you want.
You could start with whatever you want, indeed. You could start with electric guitar. You could start with an oboe, whatever floats your boat.
Ukulele.
An ukulele, a banjo.
Don't do banjo.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
No one needs another one.
But yeah, that's a common misconception. I think people, there's a bit of gatekeeping going on, I think, with that one. Like,
Right.
You have to learn the acoustic first. You have to, if your fingers aren't bleeding, you're not really putting the work in, right?
You have to cut your teeth like some 7-year-old with a guitar or something like that.
Yeah, your action has to be half an inch up in the air.
And you gotta.
You don't.
Yeah. No,
You
you can
need that.
start. You can go ahead and start with a good electric guitar, and if that's what you're into, it's okay. You don't have. There's nothing you have to prove to anybody. This is a good one. I've heard this in so many variations of this. It's hilarious. So the story goes like this: the Martin Guitar Factory burned down, and while it was burned down, they were rebuilding. X guitar brand was making the Martin guitars there, and I've heard it from so many different brands. It was this brand, it was that brand, and so that's why they're really good. It's the same thing as a Martin, and I think we can probably take that right back to like scumbag 70s guitar salespeople.
No doubt. You hear a lot of stories, and they're variations of that story, right? During this period, during this week, during this year, these were not made here. They were made there. And you're probably right.
Yeah.
It has to do with the guys who sold those guitars.
Yeah, because in pre-internet days, like, they probably tell you anything. I wasn't alive, weren't there.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I imagine it'd be like, oh yeah, Dave Gilmour built this guitar and played it on tour and whatever. Right.
They're just perpetuating the myths.
The
that they
myths,
were
yeah,
told.
perpetuating them. So from my understanding is maybe there was a fire at the Martin factory, but I don't think there was different brands making Martin guitars for them during that time period. So that's a big myth.
Nitro sounds better than Poly. This
Yeah.
This is probably one of the most popular, and I don't even know if it's fully a myth. There's probably some nuanced truth to the composition of the finishes and the differences with how they resonate. But my understanding is it has more to do with the thickness of the finish as opposed to the composition of the finish.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, like some of the best sounding electric guitars I've played are Poly finishes. I think maybe some of the misconception is like, oh, these Fenders were Nitro and these old Gibsons are Nitro, and then like these Epiphones or these whatever X brand of crap guitar is dipped in Poly like 3 inches thick, and that doesn't sound very good. That's sure, of course. But some of the best sounding guitars that I've played have a super thin Poly finish.
Yeah, and that seems to be going away, that one, a bit more because there's so many people using Poly. There's a lot of places where you can't spray Nitro because of the environmental impact.
You think it's going away?
Well, not necessarily going away, but I think that a lot more people are open to the idea of poly finishes now because a lot of good guitars have been made with poly. In the past, I think it was more because it was economical and it's maybe easier to spray. But now there's a lot of good manufacturers using poly. So I think that's the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the like legacy manufacturers that are using Nitro, like I wouldn't want their poly guitars necessarily,
That's fair.
right?
That's fair.
You know, but some of the newer guys who are using poly.
Hmm.
When I say newer, God, they've probably been around 30 years anyway. These like some of these guitars, like the Sirs or James
Hmm.
Tyler, like those guitars sound awesome. They sound awesome acoustically and plugged in. They feel awesome. The bodies resonate. Like it's no, you couldn't say
Hmm.
that Nitro would be better on that. Vintage guitars are better than new guitars.
I know you may rock the boat a little bit on this one because, and we're not saying that vintage guitars aren't good and there aren't good examples out there, but we're talking in a very general sense about vintage guitars.
Yeah, and if we're putting the collecting thing aside completely,
Hmm.
putting that all away, and we're just talking about if you're a player and the playability of your guitar, how well the guitar stays in tune, these type of things.
Hmm.
There's no question that the best guitars that have ever been made in terms of functionality are being made today.
Yeah, you think of the difference in technology that they have now versus what they had in the 50s. I mean, it's night and day. So the ability to analyze their, manufacturers to analyze their guitars is so much more vast than it's ever been. So they understand what's making a good guitar and a bad guitar.
Yeah, for sure. And precision cuts and that type of thing. I
Hmm.
can't tell you how many vintage fenders and stuff that we've had in with the neck pocket is like it's ridiculous. Like you could
Hmm.
drive a car in the neck pocket. And
Yeah.
now when you look at something like a Sir or a James Tyler or something, the neck pockets or Tom Anderson, they're
Hmm.
like I mean, they're super
Yeah,
precise. So
they're
you're
tight.
getting all that contact on the body, on the sides, and on the where it fits in the neck pocket. It's so there's no question. There's great vintage guitars that sound amazing. Absolutely, 100%. I've played some, and I've also played a lot of like guitars that feel awful.
Hmm. And they've probably been through a lot of hands in their history. And you think back to the early days of Fender, they were picking wood based on how economical it was. It wasn't about getting the best quality wood they could possibly get. It was about getting cheap lumber
Pumping units.
that they could mass produce. Again, the technology has just come so far with modern guitar building that I think it eclipses what they were doing in the 50s and the 60s and
For sure.
definitely the 70s and the 80s. Nobody's
Definitely.
arguing that though,
No,
are they?
no. I think so though. You're starting to see some prices of like some of those guitars. Like they go way up. I mean, even like anyway. But that's the whole collectability thing. It's a whole different
Hmm.
conversation. And if you enjoy playing that, that's great for you.
Hmm.
Again, my thing is I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight with
Hmm.
an instrument. And like some of that stuff is just not fun to play.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope we dispelled some of the myths and rumors and tall tales around the guitar industry and maybe even created a few of our own.
We'd love to hear some more. If you've got some guitar industry myths and tall tales, let us know in the comment section. Please subscribe to our channel and like this video.